City rail fans. You've tuned in to the Iron City Roundhouse Report, the podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of locomotives, rolling stock, and the rich history and current state of railroading. I'll be one of your hosts. My name's Brad Williamson, and our other host is my good friend Patrick Moore. And whether you're a seasoned model railroader, a history buff, or just someone who loves the sound of a passing train, you're in the right place. We're proudly affiliated with the Iron City N-Scale Facebook group, but don't let the name fool you. We cover all scales from Z to G and everything in between. We'll be exploring the vibrant railroading scene of western and central Pennsylvania, from the mighty steel giants of the past to the intricate layouts of today. Expect in-depth discussions, interviews with experts, and plenty of stories from the rails. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and enjoy the Roundhouse Report, a podcast of Iron City, by Iron City, and for Iron City. Again, listeners, to the Iron City Roundhouse Report. We have a pretty special episode in store for us. What episode are we on, Pat? Is this episode 6, I believe, we're recording?
6.
Yeah, so 6 of them we made it to. And again, it's because of the support of people like you who are listening that keeps us going. As long as you guys are interested in listening to us, we will keep doing this, and we're just having a blast. And tonight's episode is particularly special because we're going to have one of the brightest stars in the hobby today joining us on this podcast. I'll wait until we get him in here to do a proper introduction, but it's going to be a guest that many of you have heard of, and we just hope to share some inside information about this person's outstanding layout and some other really important high-level activities that he has been able to get involved in the model railroading community, but also in real railroading. So very special show planned for tonight, and we hope you enjoy it. And also want to turn it over to Pat. He has a few things he'd like to talk to you about. So take it away, Pat.
Yeah, so tonight's our first big hint for our listeners is tonight's episode's called Big Blue. And there's a reason for that we'll get into here in a few seconds. And I just want to say this is something I've been looking forward to for a long time, and I think the listeners are gonna really like this show this evening. So with that, Brad, do we want to jump into the Roundhouse Report?
Yeah, I think we can probably do an abbreviated version of it because I'm sure we've got a lot to cover with this guest. As we both mentioned, he has done a lot of just tremendously interesting things that I think our listeners are going to enjoy. So yeah, let's go ahead and we'll fire off. Let's each do one, I guess, for the Roundhouse Report, and then we'll get to the guest because I'm sure the suspense is killing our listeners right now.
Okay, so I'll go first tonight. We'll switch it up a little bit. Hey, Brad, on the report I've got is Jimmy Braum that just won the Whistle Stop cover photo of the month. What a great photo of his HO scale layout, which is based in the Wheeling Central Pittsburgh area with that line. He has a Rio Grande on that one, which Wheeling and Lake Erie always purchase some of those and then they repaint. And I thought it was just really neat because we've had Jimmy do a showcase every year for the last couple of years, and his layout just continues to get added on. You see that when you see it at afar, you're like, oh, there's a lot of chaos going on. He's working on one section, he's working on the other. But then I realized I'm doing the same thing on my layout.
And I'm definitely doing the same thing on mine too.
And then once he tweaked that one little section that he finally felt, hey, that looks really good, and he did that photo, it was like, okay, I see the method. Working on a little bit over here, working on a little bit over there. Keep adding details. And what a great cover photo. And congratulations, Jimmy, on winning that. He's also a yard master. He's one of our first yard masters.
For sure.
I'm sure he'll be back on the show here shortly. But congratulations, Jimmy. That's mine for this week.
Yeah, I would echo that. Congratulations to Jimmy. Jimmy is one of our younger guys on Iron City, and it's just been really cool for me since um, I think the first time I met Jimmy in person was with the same thing we talked about on our last episode with the OGs at that 2021 Monroeville uh, convention, the Greenberg Monroeville convention. I think it was the first time I met Jimmy 4 years ago. And it's just been really cool to watch as he has developed his skills and modeling techniques over the last 4 years to where, it's just like any of us. We're always learning to do things new and different and better. And you can just see that with him. He's done a lot of cool projects on his layout. He's had some pretty cool scratch builds of stuff that he has 3D printed. And it's just been great to watch him grow and improve and get to where he's at today, to where now he's the winner of our cover photo contest. So once again, a heartfelt congratulations to Jimmy. And just another tease, we have another uh, it's in the planning stages, so this is in the future, but another pretty special guest that we would like to try to get on here. I won't drop any names, but Jimmy has a connection to this. So hopefully Jimmy will be able to join us and help us interview this person if it comes to fruition. We're just in the very early stages right now, but definitely we'll be having Jimmy back on again because I thought he did an outstanding job when he was on as a yard master. So yeah, overall, long story short, great job, Jimmy, and proud to have you have your photo as our cover photo for the month.
Okay, Brad, what do you have today for the report?
All right, mine came from a few days back. Actually, the post was made on July 4th. Our friend Phil Ellerbrock, who, speaking of 3D modeling, Phil is another one of the ace 3D modelers we have, but he's also found a way to incorporate some electronics into his 3D printing. He recently 3D printed one of the relatively new, I think it's a development that came out of that East Palestine derailment that they had. They have these digital train inspection portals now on Norfolk Southern that they have an array of high speed, high resolution cameras and I guess other sensors. Um, I don't know if it takes the speed or what, but the real ones on the prototype are called digital train inspection portals. And Phil 3D printed one and then also inside it mounted some electronics so that he can take digital speed readings, which it looks like it's going to be, for one thing, a very nice tool for speed matching locomotives. So hats off to Phil for that creation, and I will probably be putting in an order for one of those at some point because it looks just like a really cool piece to have, and I have some other ideas too that I want to discuss with Phil for that. I won't. I don't know the details of how it would work, so I don't want to share too much before I've talked to him. But I did just want to congratulate him on that accomplishment because it looks like a really nice piece, a really nice addition to somebody's layout where it mounts over top of the tracks just like the real units do on Norfolk Southern. And when a train runs through, it will give the train speed in miles per hour, adjust the scale speed in miles per hour, obviously. But just a really cool invention that Phil came up with. So thank you, Phil, for sharing that, and we'll hope to hear more from you on that in the future. So that was mine for this week, Pat.
Yeah, Brad, I believe when Phil does those, he always has in mind the N-scale modeler, and I believe he had quick connects to Cato snap-ins for the wiring to that. I believe that's what I read. So that would be another great thing to have, especially if you're doing a T-track model, or
Yeah.
if you got a Kato track at home, just something for if nothing else, so he doesn't have to do house calls when he prints these out.
Exactly. Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
it does look like from the picture, the videos that Phil shared, that it is. Uh, you can tell by the way it fits on his Unitrack that it is definitely printed with that design feature in mind, for it to be able to integrate seamlessly, really, with Kato Unitrack, which, yes, definitely lends itself to T-Track modules. And I believe Phil may have even mentioned that in his post. Yeah, it fits the standard Kato 33 millimeter spacing for double track, and just pretty neat stuff that he is able to create. I mean, we've got basically our own set of mini manufacturers, really, operating at Iron City with guys like Phil, and it's just cool to watch that. So thanks, Phil, for sharing that on our page, and thanks for all the work you do to make. He's got it's called Filament Designs. If you want to check out some of his stuff, he's got a lot of interesting custom-made pieces that are designed to take flex track, but then you can snap it right into Kato Unitrack. And he's got alignment tools to align the tracks to be glued down or screwed down onto a T-Track module, all through 3D printing. So he's really a master of the 3D print. So hats off to Phil, and that was what I wanted to share for this week.
Okay, Brad. So let's get hyped up, man. Our special guest is about to come on. This is a great opportunity for everybody to grab that cup of coffee, that bag of chips, that soda, or that adult beverage, and we will be right back with our special guest tonight on our show, Big Blue. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We have a very special guest tonight. We're calling this show Big Blue, and there's a reason for that. And Brad's going to introduce our special guest for this evening.
Yeah, special indeed. If there's such a thing as a superstar in the model railroading world, that's who we have here tonight. We're very pleased and honored to have with us someone who has been a multi-time published author and the owner of one of the coolest layouts probably in all the world, really. Dave Abeles is our guest tonight, and for those who may not be familiar with him, if there's still folks who aren't, he's like I mentioned, multi-time published author. He has self-published a book that I'm fortunate enough to have a copy of called Guarding the Chicago Line, I believe. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. And then he also has two excellent books on model railroading. One of them is a guide to signals and signal systems. It does a very good job of describing how they work on the prototype, and then goes and takes it one step further and is kind of like a handbook or a guidebook on how to set them up on a layout if you so choose. So was his first Comback book, and the second one was on yards, and which is also I recently acquired a copy of that. Well, I've had it for a while, but I just finished reading it. So cannot recommend both of those enough. And if that's not enough, he also has really awesome layout of Conrail set in the time period of 1994 called the Onondaga Cutoff, which I know probably many of our listeners have heard of, but we're just very pleased and honored to have with us tonight Dave Abeles. So welcome, Dave. It's great to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, gentlemen, and that's an introduction that makes me blush. I don't even quite know how to respond to all that. It sounds like a lot more than it feels like in some ways, and it's a pleasure to be back here on the air and to be talking to two guys I think that really seem to get it. And man, it's what a wild couple of years, and what a wild time to be in this great hobby of model railroading. So good evening, good morning to the world as it goes. I think what Iron City started here is special. It's very organic. It's down to earth. It's got some really interesting and interested people involved with it, and I'm looking forward to being part of it. Thank you.
And so likewise, Dave, we are too. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So Dave, we want to tell you, we really wanted to interview tonight Teddy and Pete, because they were on and running. Actually, they're members before you were.
Hey, I grabbed that throttle too there, Pat. But
Nothing
yeah,
like
Teddy and Pete they were, and it's Springfield is an overwhelming experience in all the right ways. And Teddy and Pete's first experience in Springfield was just this past January, which in some ways feels like years ago, and in some ways it's right under our fingertips, and it's going to be here again before we know it. But both Teddy and Pete really enjoyed being part of the community and running trains and starting to understand, what it is to give back a little bit in the hobby. Yeah, you're having fun running trains, but you're showing people what else they can do in the hobby too.
Right. And it's always been a big thing of ours is once you touch the throttle or once your locomotive touches the rails at any of our T-Track displays, you're automatically a member. Or if you click like on our Facebook page, you're automatically a member. So it's great to have those guys as members now because they actually ran and did operations. So,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
Chris Mayman was so patient, showing them the different parts of, he had a beautiful collection of Norfolk Southern locomotives, and being able to have the kids be part of that and work with Brad. And then all of a sudden the hopper cars got loaded with cheese balls. But like, and that's like one of the best, it's model railroaders coming together and having fun. And you want to bring the next generation into the hobby. That is how you do it. You keep
Right.
it fun.
So, Dave, we have so much to talk to you about tonight, and Brad's limited to me to only a few questions. so we want to talk a little bit about your layout. We want to talk about all your social media and all the different things you do, and we want to talk about the future. So the first thing we're going to talk about, though, is tell us a little bit, Dave, about your hobbies within the hobby, and that would be your Patreon, your writing, and a little bit about your overall social media in the hobby. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, Pat. Absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity again to speak to some of the things that I think are carrying the hobby these days. My interest in the hobby, people may or may not know, but it's, like so many of us, it's almost born in. My earliest memories of things that I was passionate about included railroads. And I grew up in northwestern New Jersey. My mom would take me down to the scheduled railroad, New Jersey Transit, which it's hard to believe now looking back on it at the ripe old age of 48. And I know a lot of people will snicker at that, but I feel, but well, at least physically, mentally, I still feel like I'm 21, and that's only because I can get a drink at the bar. Otherwise, I'd be 17. But going down and watching those trains in the early 80s, with my young brother and little sister, and these early childhood memories of watching trains go by, and they were so big and they were so impressive, and you could go inside and the conductors were friendly. And railroading to me always involved connecting with other people. I loved it myself. It blew me away. I was thoroughly fascinated with all the different things that I saw and smelled and experienced as a young kid. But it was always involving other people. My family would take me, and they weren't railroad people per se. They had my grandfather, he had a casual interest in it. But the point for me that I think is so important going forward is that it was never a singular experience. It was never something that I did on my own for my own enjoyment. It always involved either going with people that enjoyed it with me or doing it in a way that I'd be able to share it at some point later. Take slides and show slideshow. Put prints in an album as a little kid and then show my cousins or my brother, the prints that I'd taken, or talk to my grandfather or close family friends that were almost surrogate grandparents about these experiences. And so as time went on, it's a long arc and there's plenty to discuss. But, once I was able to start to think about model railroading as something I could do full time, my buddy Jack and I stumbled into this orphaned O gauge railroad, O gauge because it was a 3-rail, Lionel and MTH kind of railroad in the basement of a woman who lived in Bedminster, New Jersey. Her name was Babby Siegelman. And my mom had passed away in high school. Babby ended up dating my dad on a blind date years later, decades later. And sure enough, she had this layout that her husband had left behind that hadn't turned a wheel in 7 or 8 years. So we ended up running the layout at my dad's request, and Babby thought it was fantastic. We started running these trains, and suddenly I'm part of a model railroad operation. And I started to take pictures of it, and and I said, you know what, these gotta go someplace. And so I started to want to be able to share the images and the videos that I made doing even O gauge model railroading on this basement layout that wasn't even mine. So when I started to be able to build the Onondaga Cutoff in the house I live in now, one of the original goals was operations, but a secondary goal very quickly was sharing it with the greater model railroad community. Operations requires other people. And again, it feeds into that idea that railroads for me have never been something I enjoyed without involving others. But the Onondaga Cutoff from its very early days was meant to be shared. It was built to be shared. And I think, that's sort of what's led to this gradual organic expansion of not just the operations, but the ability to share them with different model railroading audiences. And so, doing it on other podcasts, doing it through Model Railroader, and having it's sometimes you get lucky in life. Sometimes it's better. My dad always used to say this. It's sometimes better to be lucky, David, than to be good.
Right.
I was always like, no.
That's kind of our life philosophy here at
It's
Iron
all
City.
about-
Yeah.
It's all about, I mean, if you want to set your mind to it, you can do it. And it's like, yeah, if you're in 8th grade. But when you start to look at the bigger picture of life, so much of circumstance plays in. It's not about necessarily who you were born as or what you wanted to do, luck or fortune or, the Holy Spirit, the will of God, call it what you'd like.
Right.
But it finds a way into your environment, into your interactions with others. And there's opportunities and there's struggles. And I've been very fortunate, despite some of the struggles of life, to have some great opportunity to be able to share this passion and to be able to grow the ability to share that passion in the pages of Model Railroader, Railroad Model Craftsman. But that all started with a simple blog.
Right.
In 2009, I started my little blog on blogspot.com because I was going out to this great little place called the Station Inn in Crescent, Pennsylvania. You can check it out at stationinpa.com. It is one of the best places in the world, I am convinced, to stay in a hotel that's dedicated to watching trains.
Dave, Brad and I have broke that place in, and now for 2 years straight now we own the place for in-scale weekend. So for Altoona, so we're excited to be going back. So I know about, you are the one that talked about the Station Inn when I first heard about it, and Brad and we jumped on that. So I appreciate see openness of what you loved triggered something you didn't maybe even think about, not the backlash, but the flow of people now heading to the Station Inn, off your recommendation.
Yeah, well, there's a real synergy there. I mean, the Station Inn, Tom Davis, the original proprietor, turned out he, spent most of his career in New Jersey, and he taught at a high school, and then ended up being a superintendent at a major high school district here in New Jersey. That was the sister district and rival school of my father's district when he was teaching. And so just the layers of this hobby and the way they tie us to each other, the way that it is a community event, it's something I think is very, very special. And there's so much more to go into there. But I think, just to touch on some of these other topics, a blog is a wonderful thing because it allows the author and anybody they invite to be able to just freeform write and post what they'd like. And it can be philosophic. You can have a philosophical diatribe about Conrail blue versus, royal blue, or you could talk about the way freight cars work with passenger trains and why operations is more or less exciting to you than collecting or super detailing, so on and so forth. And a blog is very free form. It's really up to you. And so when I was at the station inn at Crescent, I was part of this thing they called the Old Timers Weekend, and Tom would invite his most regular customers to come out and be part of this Old Timers Weekend. So it ended up being, 8 or 10 groups of people, of 1 or 2 or 3 people at most, that would come in for a couple nights. And these groups didn't know each other except for having known Tom and been part of the station and story early on in 94, 95, 96, when Conrail was really at its zenith. So being invited to be part of the really the first official Old Timers Weekend at Crescent introduced me to a bunch of other guys, most of which were 25 or 30 or 40 years older than me. And here these guys are, 60, 65. This is in literally 1996, 97, right? Early on. And these guys, one of them has a blog. This guy is 64 years old and he has a blog.
Right.
And here I am at the age of, 31 or 32. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror and saying, hold on a second here. This guy who probably still has a rotary telephone has a blog?
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do it. I've never tried it. And I was so wound up when I realized this guy with his little layout in his basement has a blog. I'm like, I have to, and that's how the original blog started. Is I got a fire lit under my butt by a guy that I have a lot of respect for, who's since passed to the great beyond, God rest his soul. But he started a blog on blogspot.com, and I realized that I didn't have to know programming. I didn't have to know HTML web language. Even in 2000, 2001, I could start this blog. And so started to think through it, started to put it together. And by 2009, I finally had my ducks in a row. And sure enough, I was able to, put a landmark in the ground and start that Onondaga Cutoff blogspot.com, which is the longest running OC social media. And quickly thereafter, was able to meet some people through the operations network here in New Jersey, which is part of the luck factor here. I didn't realize being born in New Jersey would be so close to so many significant model railroaders. And I didn't know any of that until much later than I probably should have.
Yeah, it's kind of odd in my experience for people who are born in New Jersey to consider themselves lucky, but
well, you guys also call cabooses cabins, and there's
right. That's right. Yep. Yeah, there's a little bit of culture shock going on here.
Culture shock.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But we laugh about it. But I'll tell you what. I mean, there is no mistaking that making the trip to the station in Crescent in 1994 changed my life. It changed the way I looked at being a young man. It changed the way I look at responsibility. It certainly changed the way I look at Conrail and looked at mainline railroading, which I thought I was familiar with before that. And I'd been trackside on the New York Central and the PRR before that, just with my family, but never for multiple dedicated days of rail fanning. And when you can make a dedicated couple days to watch trains on a main line, especially a trunk line, New York Central, the PRR, the B&O back in the day in the 90s, it was an eye-opening experience. You go to Sherman Hill or the BNSF Transcon. There's an intensity there that if you aren't blown away by it, if you aren't amazed by it, you at least can't help but notice it, because it is incredible what these guys do every day in and day out.
And that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that but that was part of your goal for the Onondaga Cutoff. You mentioned the hugely important thing about sharing it. And I mean, you're, to me, one of the brightest ambassadors in the hobby today with the way you share what you do with as many people as you can. But specifically, what you wanted to share was that type of railroading that you could see at Crescent, or that you could see up in the Syracuse area on the former NYC. That's the one of the main. Both of them are two of the main arteries of commerce for the entire nation. And it is, I agree with you, if you've never experienced it, if you're a rail fan, you got to go give it a try, because it's like even the Buffalo line was fairly busy, all through my youth and even into my college years. But man, when I went to Altoona, Crescent, West and up, I always loved the West Slope. That is just a totally different animal, isn't it?
It's a different animal, and it's the kind of thing, again, that really opens your eyes to the world beyond, to just what a big deal railroading is for the greater world. And I think that, one of the great things about the hobby is the different ways you can express yourself if you're interested in sharing what you do. And, again, thanks to some contacts in New Jersey, Jerry Diedzik and Tony Custer, being able to encourage me and critique my early work, give me some really important feedback, and open the door to letting me learn how to do this a little bit better, how to take a better model railroad photograph, or how to edit words down to make it fit in a certain word count. Those were early opportunities. And, every time I got refused, I got back on my feet. We tried again. We're going to find a way to make this happen. And thanks to fortune and some hard work and a lot of good luck, being able to get a couple early photos of Model Railroader back in the 2017, 2018. Jerry published one in his column in the Operators. I think it was May of 2018, I think it was 2018. But in any case, being able to then roll with that energy, it's all about talking to people and bringing people together, which is what the railroad has always done on the prototype level. And for me, the Onondaga Cutoff, it's what we do on the OC is we model railroad aid. Yes, it's a model railroad. It's, toy trains going around the track. But what we do for the operation when we have an operating session is that we take those models, we take those toys, we take the group of guys that want to come together to make it happen, and we literally role play a modern operation, complete with radios and paperwork and whatever defects end up having on the equipment or the track, and we work through it in real time as part of these operating sessions. The OC is about modeling railroading. It's about modeling the camaraderie. And I think that word that we haven't mentioned yet tonight, but the key word in what the OC is the camaraderie that it takes to run a modern railroad. You can't do it by yourself. You literally cannot. And so you have no choice but to work with different people from all different backgrounds and, different interest levels and different heritages and different abilities to communicate, different interests. You overcome that when you have an operating session and you bring the thing to life. And so talking about it, the Mother's Life podcast, publishing it in Model Railroader magazine or Railroad Model Craftsman, doing it on Model Railroader Video Plus and on trains.com, having the Patreon channel, which has been a neat little thing I've been doing on the side for a while, being able to have a Facebook page for the Onondaga Cutoff. All of these things roll towards this larger goal of the camaraderie of the hobby, which from its very early days in my mind has been paramount. It's been central. And so I think that sort of takes us to your next question, Pat, about how we see the hobby and how it relates to the actual nuts and bolts here of the Onondaga Cutoff.
So, Dave, I wanted to ask you, because I got to be honest with you, Brad and I, during COVID, would text each other and say, hey, this Dave guy has got this Facebook Live thing where he's got a camera right there. Are you watching tonight? Because we were all isolated and we couldn't do anything.
Sure.
Two questions, Dave. When did you think about, hey, maybe I should share this with the world because we're all stuck in our basements, or like me, I was stuck on an army post in a small cabin, or Brad was stuck down in his basement. When did you realize, hey, I've got something to do here. I got something to share with Facebook Live. And then when did you realize it was a hit? And then just to tail off of that before you answer is, we have used that for the Iron City. We call it Iron City Showcase, where we have people come in and invite us into their basements and kind of showcase their layouts. And it's not easy. We've learned. I was like, especially the last time you did it, when I saw like there was 45 people down there helping you, and I was like, man, we're trying to do this with one person and the camera person. You know what I mean? So tell us a little bit about Facebook Live. How are you using it? And when did you realize, hey, I've got something going here with this? Because I think the last one you had, I think there was 150 people on there just at live. That's not, post production where people are allowed to watch it for another 30 days or whatever. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we ended up with 6,000 views on that with this most recent one, which and I checked it about that was a couple of weeks ago, and it honestly it was like so many things about the OC. It was a product of the community. So, COVID hit, and it was a scary time for all of us. There were so many things changing. A lot of it was unprecedented for us. I mean, certainly, serving in the military, which is a hands-on kind of experience, Pat. I mean, what a juxtaposition between a mandate to stay safe, but a mandate to serve at the same time. And so, thank you for your service and hanging in through all that craziness.
No problem. It was just being the truckers on the turnpike there for a while.
Wild. But it would, I remember it very clearly because, March 19th, 20th, things shut down. And I work for New Jersey Transit Rail Operations, and we work in facility management. So I'm supervising a bunch of people that maintain stations, and the decision at the state level in New Jersey, at the governor level, and then passed down through the organization, was that, hey, New York, New Jersey are places where there are thousands of hospital workers that depend on that transit to get to work. They are critical employees, which means that every NJ Transit employee is a critical employee. And those that have operating jobs need to be at work, not at home. So you're going to go to work, and we'll figure it out. And so every day I would, jump on the car or jump in the train. They'd shut the headquarters building down, but we all still had to be at work. So, we used to go to the stations, go to the shops. Everybody was wearing a mask, indoors, outdoors. The fear that was so tangible in March and April of 2020 was everywhere. And it was a scary time. And I remember getting a phone call from Rich Wisniewski. Rich Wisniewski is a good friend, an ally of mine. I met him through NJ Transit early in my career there, more than 20 years ago, more than 25 years ago now, which is hard to believe. And he'd been a regular here on the OC for years. And he gave me a ring one day, and he says, Dave, he says, have you watched any of this stuff that, that Otto's been doing, with Facebook? And I'm like, no, like, not, well, you got to take a look. Like, go back and look at the Railroad Craftsman Facebook page. Otto does these live things, and he talks to people to jump on. And man, he's like, Otto seems to have fun with it, and he does it from his office with his library books. But you could do it from your layout. You should really think about it. I mean, you definitely have the gift of gab. You got to give it a try. I laughed, and I said, what? I mean, I've heard that before in my little political meetings downtown, but I've not heard in the railroad world that anybody has the gift of anything. Like, that's not how we talk about things in the railroad world. And he says, you got to give it a try. So sure enough, in April of 2020, I tried my first Facebook Live, and it exploded. I mean, we had over 200 people watching it at one point, because everyone was waiting for something to do at 8 p.m. on a weeknight. So the Facebook Live app was going nuts. We ended up with a couple thousand people that watched it. And Rich says, Dave, like, this is great. And, do you think Jack could dispatch from Morristown? Because we had already done the remote operations thing by this point. We figured out the remote dispatcher. And that's the key. So what Facebook Live allowed us to do was take the remote dispatcher, use the same technology to create remote operators, and build this entire virtual operating session that I could share by myself from the basement, socially isolated. And the rest was history. It just took off. I never would have imagined that Rich's suggestion to go on Facebook Live and run a couple trains past the camera and talk about what they were, that it would that it would catch on like that people would be that interested. But through the pandemic, we had there's several live videos that ended up with 8,000 or 9,000 views.
Wow.
In the peak of the pandemic, and this is just Dave with a T-shirt on, drinking a beer, watching trains go by on his own model railroad. Like, it's a little strange when you think about it.
Wait a minute, just one beer?
Well,
one beer at a time, right?
It starts with one beer.
That's right. Hey, go
I'll
ahead.
I'll bet you Pat can appreciate that too. I'll bet you it starts with one, right, Pat?
It always just starts with one.
That's how it goes.
I can still remember those when we were watching them. You there by yourself, and Pat and I are just thinking, this is so cool. He's got guys from all over the Northeast, either dispatching or running trains. So we decided we had to try it. And the first time, I can still remember the first day we finally figured it out. When Pat was able to he was out. Were you in Pittsburgh or were you on the Army bit? Were you at Fort Indian Town Gap? I don't remember.
I think that was when I was back in Pittsburgh for our first try. Yeah. Because I wanted the stronger Wi-Fi.
Yeah. and all of a sudden I see the lights blinking on this locomotive that he had taken control of on my layout. So it is stuff like that, and I'm sure it is for you too. It's just so satisfying once you get it figured out and you see something like that go into operation. And,
look, I'm going to argue that I think as operations go, it's one of the most satisfying things. I don't know that you can really talk about something that makes the male mind tick. Us guys love to fix things. We love to get things to work.
Yep.
And if you can make it work in a way that makes everybody happy, boy, life is good.
And the opposite is also true when you run into something that you can't get to work.
Yeah. So Dave, Brad and I realize when I'm driving the train remotely and I get a phone call and I'm using my iPhone, the train continues to work, but I lose the screen.
Hey, there's only one way us guys learn, and I think the ladies in the audience can have a laugh with us guys too, because let's guys only learn by screwing things up.
That's right.
That's who we are, and it's okay. This is an age-old tradition of us making mistakes and then changing course to make things better. And that's
the bigger the mistake, the better we learn, right?
True. But I think that's part of what makes this hobby so exceptional, is that whether you're sharing your work on a Facebook page or at RPM, a Railroad Prototype Modelers Meet, whether it's an operating session or not, the goal is to share this stuff and pay homage to a certain prototype and to do it better than last time. And that's a noble thing in today's world where there's so much division and so much frustration. If you can find a way to do whatever you do a little bit better than you did it the day before, then you can go to bed a satisfied person.
Very well said, my friend. Very well said. And then
I mean?
Yep. And then when you add to it, in your particular situation, the amount of people that you bring together toward that end, it's not just you and a couple friends in your basement. It's, you do have upwards of 14, 16 people usually for op sessions, but people watching literally all over the world. Then there's back to the camaraderie aspect of it and the coming together and just everybody pulling in one direction, because it's so uncommon really in today's, I guess it isn't uncommon, but when it doesn't happen, that seems to be what gets all the attention, the division.
Well, correct.
Yep.
Correct. I mean, there's a natural tendency for the clickbait online to look at everybody else's problems and think about, how you're not part of it. And look, I mean, we can all learn, we can all move through these things. Yeah, this is not to yuck anybody else's yum, as the kids say these days. But the point is that there is a higher concord. There is a better way to do things. We can all learn from mistakes. We can all learn. Everybody's got a weakness. And if you are honest about that, that opens a door to be able to make it a little bit better. not just for you, but for everybody around you, right? So that's what the OC, and that's the nuts and bolts of what we do here, is about how can you communicate better? How can we put a rule in place that makes sure that people understand for the first or second time on the railroad what they need to do? How can people feel like they're part of the team? Everybody's got something to contribute. And granted, it's an invitational, and that's the best operating sessions always are, because operations, like any group of people trying to do something special, there's nothing's granted. There's no guarantees. What everybody comes with the atmosphere and the attitude that they have earned their spot there. There's an accountability to doing your job, to doing it well. And it's not to say that rookies can't make mistakes. Of course they can. That's join the club, right? I mean,
Right.
that's my first couple of years on the real railroad were full of gaffes. I just got screamed at by my boss last week for something I thought I was doing right. And, but on the railroad, being right doesn't make it right.
So, Dave, let's turn our attention to the layout. And let's really get into, as we've been talking about, we're a nuts and bolts type of show. So I know Brad's got like 45 questions he want to ask you about the actual layout. And I know Brad was just there, and I'm not going to get into that because we have some troubles between me and Brad.
That caused a few issues on the Iron City leadership team.
Well, maybe that's for a future podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
As of this afternoon, I am still on double top secret Iron City probation because of that, but we won't get into
that. I love it.
So, Dave, when you decided, hey, I'm going to build this layout and I'm going to go, with the most updated DCC and track, and what direction did you go into? What are you actually running? And what do you think works best for you on your layout?
So the larger picture is that I've always loved older homes. Living in New Jersey means you spend too much money for too little. I think that's probably the case everywhere in our. I love this country, but boy, it's cheap anymore. But New Jersey and any metropolitan area, the prices have risen pretty quickly. So I bought this house I was single. It was my salary. It was something I had to do on my own. And a lot of it I fixed up with help from friends and learning how to do things sort of the school of hard knocks and making mistakes and hiring people where I had to, but learning how to do what I could do the rest of it, because that was just something baked into me from a young age. And the OC is the same way. So when I bought an older home, there aren't that many that have a basement that's suitable for model railroads, but I made sure that when I bought mine that it would, and it worked out great. This is an 1840 structure, 1840 foundation, and it's old field stone, about 2 foot thick. And everything I've done, in service of the OC has had to accommodate the fact that it's an old basement, old fieldstone basement. So we repointed the walls, and when I studied things out, I went with the 2x3 framework. There were green 2x4s on the floor because of the possibility of the occasional water that comes in. A lot of that's been fixed. Actually, all of it's been fixed at this point now. Knock on wood. It hasn't exactly been a good year for United States flooding. So I feel I've gotten, again, lucky. But we've done all we can to divert the drainage away from the house and fix some long-standing drainage issues. So spots that used to get wet now are no longer wet, even with all the rain we've had in New Jersey in the last couple of years. But we studied things out, and all of it was accommodating an uneven floor and uneven rafters in the ceiling, old chestnut rafters, and making a framework that would support the railroad in a robust way, but doing it in a cost-effective way too. And I think that's one of the important points, is that we all would love to design, a beautiful finished railroad like Tony Cuckle Plate or the Allegheny Midland, or the final version of the Utah Belt, or the final version of the Cat Mountain in Santa Fe, the final version of the Virginian in Ohio, or there's so many great model railroads right now, and because of social media and the print media, still we've seen so many of them. But look, you got to live within your means. You got to find a way to make it work within your budget. And so there's nothing wrong with starting small, starting simple, and just make sure that whatever you do it well enough that it can support your future ambitions too. So don't put down something on a floor that gets wet sometimes unless it's green lumber. Don't put new lumber and a new layout around old plumbing or old electrical. Make sure that you've updated your systems as you go along. And even if that means you only have an 8-foot shelf layout to get started, well, so be it. That's still a great way to get started. You're setting yourself up for success if you do things right the first time. And the nuts and bolts of the OC, getting into using decent lumber, using 2x3s. There's a bunch of L girder bench work as well. But I use 5/8 and 3/4 plywood for the road bed, and built it with the help of a guy that was much more skilled than I was with carpentry. I learned a lot from him. And we made sure that we had, the boxes checked. We had the oil burner had been serviced, and we ended up having to replace that. So that was a year-long delay in our progress. But even a year-long delay, everybody listening to this has got to realize one of the beautiful things about this hobby is that it is a lifelong goal to accomplish some of these things. You have to keep your eyes on the prize. And the best part is that even with your eyes on the prize, it might take you a year to get there, 5 years, 10 years to get there. But every day you can do something in service of that goal. Maybe it's putting a spring in a Katy coupler. Maybe it's painting one little piece of rail. It's fixing a building. It's doing a tree. It's adjusting a coupler height. So as you go along, these little steps add up. And I think when I first started to look at what to do with the OC, I had a friend that was selling a bunch of microengineering, Atlas, and China Hera Flex Track. He'd gotten out of the hobby. He wanted to sell it. He's like, make me an offer. And I said, yeah, but each one of these pieces of track at the time was like, $2.50 new, like $2.50 for 3 feet. I'm like, look, Chelsea, I don't know, man. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, he's like, Dave, make me an offer. I said, how much is in there? He's like, did you hear me? Make me an offer. And I said, Charles, I don't know, buddy. How about $250 for everything? He's like, sold. I'm like, what? Like, how many switches? How many? Well, this guy did me a favor. I mean, he was looking to make some cash quick off the stuff that he'd never used. I ended up with a couple 100 feet of flex track and a couple dozen switches for $250.
Wow.
And granted, this is 16, 17 years ago now, so it's a while back. And everything, these are all old China Hera switches, so I had to do a bunch of the modifications to make them DCC friendly. But this is all part of the organic experience. And so you look for these opportunities when they come along. So the majority of the track that's visible on the OC is China Hera and mostly microengineering code 83 flex track. The switches are mostly China Hera that I've modified, handful of microengineering as well, and a couple Picos. And if I had to do it all again today, the new Walther switches are beautiful. The Payco switches are beautiful. The modern flex track from both those manufacturers is great. But I still think microengineering flex track is the future of top shelf looking flex track on your railroad. The road bed beneath it is mostly Woodland Scenics foam road bed that comes in those rolls.
Yeah.
And I used latex adhesive caulk to glue both the road bed and the track down in separate passes. All the track is super elevated. The DCC system is the NCE Power Pro 5 DCC system. And I chose that.
Could you repeat that, please?
The NCE Power Pro 5 DCC system.
that was just for some of our members in the Iron City. I wanted them to hear that twice.
Yeah, I knew I was going to ask you to repeat.
NCE DCC system Power Pro 5. Yeah. And the reason I chose it, the different systems have their different merits. If you've got a shelf layout and you only use locomotives that aren't consisted, and you want to use proprietary throttles from the manufacturer, look, Digitrax works great. It's an older system, but it's one that's very robust. It does play nicely with signal systems, especially if you're going to go with the Digitrax signal system. with their either their SC8C or the more modern version of that controller board. But one thing where Digitrax really struggles is consisting. And in fact, all of the DCC systems, which is, it's funny, for us, it's the modern part of the hobby. But when you look at DCC, a good chunk of this is from the early 90s. The technology is not new.
Yep.
It's 14.4 modem, telephone modem technology. And it's 9,600 baud a minute. I mean, it's like, or baud a second, I guess. It's super slow. So, one of the things to remember is that none of this stuff is that new. But what NCE does better, in my opinion, than any other system, and I've done my homework on this, is it allows the ease of consisting is unparalleled. And if you're modeling a trunk line, if you're modeling a modern regional, even short lines now in a lot of cases are using multiple unit consists. If you're consisting at all between sessions, let alone during a session, NCE is the way to go.
Hey, Pat, have you ever heard anyone else say that?
I don't know. Maybe a guy named Brad. I'm not sure.
No, I completely, I'll tell you, I've had my iPad, Dave, on TCS's new system it's a beautiful system, but that was what kept me in the NCE camp. I bought the new PH Pro instead of which, and the TCS system overcomes a lot. I don't even know if overcomes, but it is a much more modern system. It has an LCC bus, which is an order of magnitude faster. But I just could not give up the just amazing ease of setting up advanced consist. And to me, the big thing is being the way you can select an advanced consist. You don't have to remember. You don't even have to write down the consist address when you put it in. You don't even have to know what it is. You can use either the leading or the trailing locomotive, which to me, from an operations standpoint, is just, you can't overstate how powerful that is. You can, you just look at the cab number on your locomotive, and that's the DCC address for the entire consist, not just for that loco. And
Brad, it's how the prototype operates.
Yeah.
And that's the key goal. Look, and it's, we joke about it, of course, because that's part of the fun of the hobby. But look, you're modeling a prototype. And if your prototype uses big consists, I can tell you when you jump, when Chris Wayman is modeling a Norfolk Southern train, he's listening to the scanner when he's out making his videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that lead locomotive, the crew climbs up there. They check their paperwork. They look back in the consist to make sure everything's where it needs to be. They walk back through the consist to make sure everything's online. But they're not selecting a different number. They're running it from the lead locomotive. And that's what NCE allows you to do. You can make it so that the sounds that you want to respond to the consist address do that. That's easy to do. The lighting stays off on your trailing units. So it's none of this silliness where you have 4 units and the front headlight is on each unit. No, you have a headlight on at the beginning of the consist and everything else is off except for the markers at the back. And that's just how it works.
And then the cool thing is if you have like a point-to-point layout and you get that consist to the end and want to bring a train back with it, you can select what was the rear locomotive now becomes the leading locomotive, and all of what you just said applies to what was the rear.
Yeah,
is now the leading. Yeah,
you turn off your markers, turn on your headlight, ring the bell, blow the horn, and away you go. And it's all about selecting the lead locomotive, and that is exactly how the prototype works, which I think is a big strength for anybody that uses multiple unit consists. Like, look, life is short. Are you gonna miss the $500? Maybe for a couple weeks, but in the end, if you run big trains, you'll never regret making the choice. It's NCE it's a great system.
Yeah, I agree, and just I'm happy with mine as well. I just can't. Everybody at Iron City knows that. I'm sure they're sick of hearing me talk about it. But
but the thing, and again, the thing to remember, we all have to smile through this stuff because
Yeah.
What if you're having this conversation, you've already won. You're already
Yep.
checking the box, because that means you love the hobby enough to care enough about how you're controlling it. And boy, let me know where else in life you can find that kind of satisfaction these days that you can control, that you can make better, that you can bring people together on to make even better than that. It's just a very exciting thing to be able to do.
It's why it's the greatest hobby in the world, in my humble opinion.
Bar none. I agree.
Yep. Yep.
So, guys, as we wrap up here, we had one final question that and conversation we wanted to finish off here, and that is, Dave, what's the future for you? What is there anything going to be new to the layout? Are you going to do a new anything futuristic, or what are you seeing for yourself here in the next year?
Well, we just added a extension, another part of the staging operation here, which is allowing a new variety of equipment to be stored. We touched on it on the last Facebook Live, but basically now I'm going to have a Conrail office car special with the famous green E8 and the whole train that matches. There's a ballast train that's being assembled. There's a work train that's being assembled. We're going to be able to use it to move blocks of cars around in the staging area, so that certain manifest trains that ran on the Chicago line that looked distinctive because of the traffic they carried will also now be able to carry a block of that distinctive traffic. And so what we're going to introduce is another layer of variables to the OZ operating sessions that I think are going to add some visual interest to longtime followers, and I think are going to be able to open doors for all of us that do operations to look at how you can better integrate these things, in real time in an operating session. And the continuation of the Facebook Live is going to allow us to be able to share that worldwide. I'm also excited now, to be very general. My kids are a little bit older than they were, of course, and that means almost 13 for my daughter and 10 and 8 for my sons. I will actually be giving a clinic. I'm really excited about this. I'm going to be giving a clinic at the Australasian Region National Convention this August.
Oh, wow.
In
That
Brisbane.
is so cool.
I'm going to Australia, and the timing worked out that I can stop over in Brisbane during the convention and give a clinic live in Brisbane.
Wow.
Oh, that's excellent.
That is
So
outstanding.
all of the Aussies that are listening in here, they can get themselves up to the national convention up there for that region, the regional convention. Marty Jenkins and all the guys up there in Brisbane are looking forward to this. They've done a lot of work to put it together. They've got a great list of clinics, hands-on and lectures, some layout tours, etc. And if you can make it, I'll see you in Brisbane at the end of August.
Excellent.
Just amazing. Just amazing.
I mean, it's this hobby is gone worldwide. It's fantastic. So, the future of the OC is to continue to support that. We're going to double down on operations. I'm excited about the new staging and the variables that'll bring. But I'm also going to be finishing up the scenery on the layout. So I've got a bunch of article ideas and some projects in the next couple of years, for the pages of the magazines. But, to me, operations is a next level part of this hobby. And I think it opens doors for everyone to be able to enjoy the hobby a little bit more. And it's not that you have to be a nickel and dimer or a paperwork hound or someone that's only caring about operations. There's lots of ways to enjoy the hobby. But the camaraderie, which to me is the most special part, is the center of operations. And that's where the strength of this hobby in the future lies, is a coming together of people to celebrate what we all love so much to start off with.
So,
Well
Dave,
said once again. Thank you for that.
Brad and I want to also announce tonight with Dave that we're going to be doing some new spin-offs of the podcast. It'll be with a podcast within a podcast.
Segments, if you will.
Segments called Office Car Specials. Volume 1 will be the first one out here soon. And that's going to be with our good friend Todd Treaster. And we can't wait to hear both of you guys on at the same time. telling stories.
Oh my God. Like Todd is a guy I should have known in person long before I did. It was a mutual friend that introduced us, and all of this started to fall together. And yeah, there's a lot of stories to tell. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm thrilled this is coming together.
Yeah, and Brad,
as are we. The
Yeah.
problem is going to be, Pat, we are going to have to really work to get anything out of these two guys.
I know.
I mean, you're gonna. They don't like to talk. It's just
it's gonna be a lot of dead airspace for our podcast.
yeah.
So we really appreciate Dave coming on tonight, and we know we're going to have you back because there's a lot still to talk about, especially your layout and all your future endeavors. So thank you so much for being on tonight. We hope to have you back on very soon. We're also going to have the Office Car Special Volume 1 out here shortly also. And so we'll be able to hear Dave and Brad and Todd and myself a little bit more.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Brad, show for the ages, man. Another great show in the books. Really appreciate Dave Abeles coming on this evening. A lot to talk about. I'm sure we're definitely not done. I know he has a lot more to tell us about his layout and what his future endeavors are, and what's going to happen with his Patreon channel in the future. So I know he'll be back. Just excited to talk to him for the first time. I know you guys are really starting to build a great friendship, and I'm hoping to do that also. Just a great guy, great storyteller, right? I mean, he can put a story together and really bring you into what he's trying to discuss. So, what do you think, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely. He's flat out one of the most engaging personalities I've ever met. He's the kind of guy who loves to talk, but yet you never get tired of hearing what he has to say. He always has something interesting. His enthusiasm is just absolutely infectious, and just a generally good guy to be around. He's the type of person you feel lucky to know, even a little bit. Which, as you mentioned, we started out just watching his live shows back during COVID, and to be able to come full circle where we got to talk to him tonight on our podcast was just really cool. And so thanks so much to Dave for joining us, and we just look forward to what the future holds for him and his crew on the Onondaga Cutoff. And just to give Dave another plug, he's got a great Patreon channel. So if you're a Patreon member, you can try to look him up there, the Onondaga Cutoff Patreon channel with Dave Abeles. Dave has a Facebook page called Conrail's Onondaga Cutoff by Dave Abeles. He's got his books with it's now what is the name of the it's the old Kalmbach Publishing. I can't think of the new but his books are for sale through them. His books, I think, can be found on Amazon. If you have any thought of getting into designing a yard, which if you're a model railroader, you're probably going to need a yard someplace, or if you want to have signals, whether you want to have just a simple signaling system, or if you want to have one like he does that absolutely mimics and perfectly models what the prototype did on Conrail, on the Conrail Chicago line in the 1990s. Those books are just invaluable resources, and unlike some things that are valuable resources that can be a little bit dry, Dave's writing is not like that. I mean, once I start reading one of his books, it's difficult for me to put it down. So, just all kind of exciting stuff going on for him, and we wish him nothing but the best as he and his regular crew there, just outstanding people up on the Onondaga Cutoff, keep doing what they're doing, which is showing what big time railroading was in the Conrail era in the 90s. It was the pinnacle of Conrail, and just what a wild success story Conrail was, rescuing Northeast railroading from bankruptcy and near death, really. And so an amazing success story of Conrail that he models, and he's building a pretty amazing success story for himself with the things he's doing with his social media presence, with the layout, and of course with his writing. So, thanks once again, Dave, for joining us. It was great to have you here, and we look forward to what the future holds. So, Pat, back to you.
Yeah, so Brad, also want to give a little shout out and preview that we'll have Dave and Todd Treaster together here for the Office Car Special Volume 1. That'll be out here in a few weeks, so our listeners can get more of Dave and Todd. So Todd's also been a guest, so we put two of our first guests, our special guests together and do a Volume 1. So I think we're going to enjoy that. So, Brad, as we close out tonight, I'll tell everybody that you can join the Iron City InScale page. It's free on Facebook. We do ask you to answer the questions, though. That's how we know that we're not. It's a private page, so we don't want to have our listeners or our members getting anything other than what they're supposed to have on the page for protection. So we ask you to answer the questions on our Iron City page, and we'd love to have you as a member. Also, if you're listening to our podcast right now, just to make sure you understand that you can get your our podcast, wherever you find podcasts, and including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbeam, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Listen Notes, Podchaser, and Boomplay. So we're everywhere, Brad. And I'll let you close out tonight with our show. And just an amazing show this evening, and so glad to be part of it.
Yep, I'll just echo what you said. It was an exciting thing to be a part of, and thanks so much to Dave once again for joining us. And I hope our listeners enjoyed it, and we look forward to continuing to deliver content that we hope you guys are enjoying listening to. We appreciate you so much as listeners, and thanks so much for tuning in. And everybody have a great day, and we'll be talking to you soon here from the Iron City Roundhouse Report. All right, rail fans, that's all the steam we've got for this edition of the Iron City Roundhouse Report. Until next time, keep those gauges green, your couplers connected, and may your layouts always run smoothly. Happy railroading.